Hi everyone, my name is Sarah Taffel, and today we are doing another episode of UF DPM's Extension Talks. Today we have Abigail Perret-Gentil as our guest. So Abigail, if you can start today by introducing yourself.
My name's Abigail Perret-Gentil, and I am the founder and president of Grace Grows. I also do community engagement for Grace Marketplace, which is the low barrier shelter in Gainesville. And before that, I worked primarily in agricultural biotech.
So can you tell us a little bit about the history of Grace Grows?
I think it's been about 5 years now. Grace Marketplace is a low barrier shelter kind of across from the airport in Gainesville, and it opened up about 5.5 years ago. And it was created as a solution to homelessness because the way that services were being provided were missing a huge set of the population. And so they opened up this low barrier shelter as a way to have services all in one location for people, because with a lack of resources, it's really hard to address all the things that you need to recover from homelessness. So I started off as a volunteer there. And after a couple months, I asked them if I could work in this small garden that they had. And that garden, they didn't really get a whole lot of help in the garden. And it kind of was a little bit stagnant. I decided to scale it down and move it closer to where the main services were, where we had access to water and things like that, and make it small so that it was manageable. And so for a while, I was just out there volunteering, gardening with people. And that was on my weekends. And then with agricultural biotech with working nematodes. um, and so we slowly scaled up the garden piecemeal at each point, determining whether it was manageable with the amount of help that we had. And also, this was with the people who were receiving services there. So people who are experiencing homelessness really helped to build the garden with me. And just last year, we decided to incorporate it as a nonprofit after consulting with the director of Grace Marketplace, because until then, it was really a program of Grace Marketplace that was started by a couple volunteers. And we modeled the program similarly to their culinary program, where people work in a kitchen and they learn a vocational trade and they can get a actual official credential for themselves while in that program. And they asked us to do that with the garden. And so we created our first horticulture vocational program. And it was actually a collaboration with the Department of Community and Family Sciences at UF, where in tandem they performed a needs assessment with 300 people who were experiencing homelessness to determine whether an intervention like this could help with nutritional needs and mental health needs. And so we did a study at the same time that we did our pilot course. And that's also when I started communicating with Dr. Hodges and some other DPM students who just really unofficially participated in teaching the classes, and Dr. Hodges came along, and that's how I met her. And now she's one of our board members, and the DPM program has just really been instrumental in making this work. But that was our pilot program. At that point, the first time we did it, we had about a 50% dropout rate. It was a small cohort of students. But you have to understand that you're in this environment with people who are experiencing crisis and long-term homelessness and untreated mental health. And the average literacy level of people is 8th grade. Many people have been institutionalized. So over time, each time that we did the course, we worked with DPM students who would adapt the curriculum and improve it each time that we did it, to make it accessible to people with learning disorders, and to make it really hands-on. And so the way that we have it now is that we have half of the classes outdoor where they get their own space to grow from. Um, and then half of the classes indoor lecture, teaching the Florida Nursery Grower and Landscape Association curriculum. And that's what the DPM students teach and adapt. Very hands-on, it's fun. It's meant to be fun for the students. We also have space in the garden that are group managed areas, and people who don't necessarily want to participate in the classes can also have their own space. Really important to people out there. We have meetings every month where they tell us what they want in the garden, what they want to grow, things they like, things that work, things that don't work. So our community engagement model is really essential to what we do. And just recently, we've changed our mission to be not just for people that are experiencing homelessness, but for people that are experiencing food insecurity as well. So we grow food for the shelter kitchen. We also deliver food to people who were in the program at Grace who've been housed, because frequently people, when they're housed, they actually become more food insecure. And we just know that this is not just an issue that affects people who are experiencing homelessness. And so we would like to expand farther into the community as well.
That's very impressive. And you mentioned having a culinary class. So what other kind of services do you provide now?
So the main program model that we have is community development, horticulture, therapy, and education. So the educational aspect of it is the FNGLA curriculum, which we've adapted to teach for people at Grace. The therapeutic aspect is having healthy food, working in the garden on Sundays, having a plot of earth that belongs to them. You know, the people there don't own very much. They're allowed to have 2 bags when they have a bed on site. But until recently, there was 115 people housed in Grace Marketplace, and then there was a tent city of about 200 people outside. And so with the therapeutic aspect, I train our volunteers in trauma-informed care and other various communication techniques to work with people who experience a lot of trauma. And then the community development aspect of it is more of a long-term goal. It has a lot to do with our community engagement, where the people that are affected are the ones that determine what we do. But also, we will be working in Southeast Gainesville, which is a food desert, to come up with a community designed plan to address food insecurity in that area. And many of the people that we work with come from that community, and they also return to that community. Yeah, and we also provide food to the shelter kitchen. So the vocational program is kind of our strongest program, but also just growing the food, having that garden, and then the community development.
So how have you seen these services impact the community?
One of the biggest things that I see, which isn't something that you can really measure in numbers, is the sense of belonging and accomplishment that people have from participating and working together. People who experience homelessness are one of the most alienated groups that exist. And so to have this space that they have power over, that's theirs, to go through this class. I mean, I've had people tell me that, like, they can dream again and set goals again for the first time. We have people that after they're housed, they come back and continue to work in the garden. We set up gardens for people who've been housed because they don't, it's like the one nice thing that they have while they're experiencing homelessness, you know, that and their pets and their friends. But, you know, I have so many people tell me that when they get housed, they don't want to leave the garden. I'm like, no, you have to leave the garden. We'll build you a new one, you know, one that like nobody can steal your tomatoes. So that's kind of the biggest thing. But what we would really like to do is address food insecurity. And sometimes that can be done in a roundabout way. It's not just about giving people food, it's about people having the power to take care of themselves. And so with the community development, having resources for this community that are governed by this community, because when you go in and tell somebody what they need, it doesn't work. They know what they need. They're the experts over their own lives. And so while we haven't made the biggest impact farther out into the community, that's one of our goals.
That's really amazing to hear. So how can students get involved with this?
Primarily DPM students or any UF students, because I'm willing to take a lot of help.
Anybody, DPM or other?
The way that DPM students have historically helped us is by teaching a class, which is really rewarding because you get to know these students over a long period of time. We've had several students who continue to work with us afterwards, and then they'll help mentor new DPM students that come in for the next cohort. But they'll also come out and work with us in the garden. I would love to have another person with the technical expertise to help manage the garden. And, you know, I can teach all the other things about, you know, working in that environment and how to grow things that people are going to want to use. But we need people to help us do outreach and marketing that understand how to talk about different groups of people in an ethical way. We need just like hard labor. We need, so I usually try to get UF students to help with like the big building days and the big project days seasonally, depending on what's going on, what we're growing and stuff, and leave some of the easier, more gardening type tasks for the people at Grace Marketplace, so that it's more fun for them. I would love to have somebody that would help us write a newsletter or make short videos.
And to finish up, do you have any advice for people who want to help the community or even start their own organization?
My advice for people that want to get involved, that might want to volunteer somewhere, is be curious. Ask the people and ask the organization what it is that they need. A lot of times I see people who are very well intentioned and kind human beings have these like big ideas and want to help in some way, but it's not necessarily the way that people need help. And so sometimes it can actually make it more laborious. Um, for someone that wants to start their own organization, um, I would give the advice to reach out to people that have done it before. It's hard. It's absolutely like worthwhile, but always approach it with kind of a sustainability mindset, because it's really hard to get an organization to the point where you can make enough money for it to run. Right now, we're all volunteer run and we're working towards sustainability, but it takes time. But I think one of our strong suits is that we do reach out to our community members with different expertise. We're really good listeners. And we don't have a ton of volunteers, but the people who do get involved um, are just like such dedicated people. So it makes a big difference.
Well, thank you very much, Abigail. I appreciate you zooming in today to share all of this info.
You're welcome.
And that's all we have for today. So thank you for taking the time to watch our DPM extension talks and stay tuned for more.